the unforgiving frontier of 1882. Nevada promised fresh starts but delivered harsh realities instead. Josephine arrived as a mail-order bride to find her husband vanished and an abandoned baby crying in his empty cabin. With no money to return east and facing a town's suspicion about her race, she claimed the child as her own despite having no legal right. When the baby's wealthy relatives arrived demanding custody, Josephine must choose between keeping the child in poverty or losing her forever to privilege. She would discover that the greatest act of love sometimes requires the ultimate sacrifice. The courtroom air hung thick with dust and judgment. Judge Morrison's gavel struck the worn wood with finality. The sound echoed off bare walls like a gunshot. The child will be returned to her blood relatives in Boston. Case closed. Josephine clutched the baby tighter against her chest. The infant's small fingers curled around the fabric of her only good dress. Behind her, townspeople shifted in wooden chairs. Their whispers cut through the stale air. Margaret Whitmore stepped forward. Her traveling dress cost more than most families saw in a year. She extended manicured hands toward the child. "She's mine." Josephine's voice barely rose above a whisper. "I'm all she's ever known." The sheriff moved closer. His boots scraped against floorboards. Margaret's hands remained outstretched, patient, certain. Josephine backed toward the courtroom door. The baby whimpered. Outside, wind rattled the windows. The same wind that had brought her to this godforsaken place 6 months ago. The stagecoach had lurched to a stop in a cloud of red dust. Copper Creek stretched before her like a collection of broken dreams. Buildings leaned against each other. For support, the main street was nothing more than packed earth and hope. Josephine had stepped down with her single suitcase. The marriage certificate crinkled in her other hand. She'd memorized every word Samuel had written. Kind words, promising words, words that painted pictures of a life worth having. The cabin sat at the edge of town, smaller than she'd imagined. The door hung slightly open. No smoke rose from the chimney. She'd pushed inside expecting to find her husband. Instead, silence greeted her. And something else. A sound that made her blood run cold. Crying. The baby lay in a makeshift crib, little more than a wooden crate lined with torn fabric. The child's face was red from screaming. Her tiny arms bore strange marks, burns that had healed badly. A note lay crumpled on the table. Samuel's handwriting. Gone to settle business. Back in 3 days. S. The ink was faded. This note was weeks old. Josephine had lifted the baby without thinking. The crying stopped. 2 brown eyes stared up at her. The same eyes she'd seen in Samuel's photograph. This was his daughter. But where was the mother Samuel had never mentioned? The baby's diaper was soiled. Her clothes were too small. She weighed nothing. Someone had been feeding her. Barely. Josephine found goat's milk in the cold cellar. She warmed it over the fire, fed the child with a makeshift bottle. The baby drank desperately, then slept in Josephine's arms while the sun set over the mountains. She'd named her Hope. The next morning brought visitors. Mrs. Henderson from the general store arrived with flour and curiosity. Her eyes swept over Josephine's dark skin, over the baby in her arms. "Funny how Samuel never mentioned his bride was colored. You sure you got the right place?" Josephine showed her the marriage certificate. Mrs. Henderson read it slowly. Her mouth tightened. "Well, Samuel's business is Samuel's business, I suppose. You'll be needing supplies." At the store, other women gathered. They spoke in hushed tones. Their stares felt like brands. Josephine needed food, diapers, medicine for Hope's burns. But Samuel had left no money. "He has an account," Mrs. Henderson said. She opened a ledger. Numbers filled the pages. "Course you can read it yourself." The letters swam before Josephine's eyes. She'd never learned to read properly. Had memorized responses to Samuel's letters with help from others. Now her secret lay exposed like a wound. "I'll settle up when Samuel returns." Mrs. Henderson's smile was sharp as winter wind. "Course you will." The days stretched into weeks. Hope grew stronger under Josephine's care. The burns began to heal, but Samuel never came home. Tom Mackenzie lived on the neighboring ranch, a hard man with weathered hands and suspicious eyes. He appeared at sunset one evening. His horse stamped nervously. Samuel owed money to dangerous men. "Whatever game you're playing here, girl, you'd best pack up and leave before they come looking." Josephine stood on the porch. Hope slept against her shoulder. The baby's breath was warm on her neck. "I'm not going anywhere without my husband. This is my home now." Tom's eyes narrowed. "Samuel ain't coming back. Smart folks would see the writing on the wall. Then I suppose I'm not smart folks." He rode away without another word, but Josephine saw him watching from the ridge, waiting. That night, riders circled the cabin, dark shapes against darker sky. They didn't approach, didn't call out, just rode in slow circles like buzzards waiting for death. Josephine sat by the window with Hope in her arms. The baby's fingers wrapped around her thumb, so small, so trusting. Outside, the wind carried voices, men's voices, planning, something in words she couldn't catch. She thought of the train that had brought her here. How easy it would be to buy a ticket back east, to leave this place and its mysteries behind. But Hope stirred in her sleep, made soft baby sounds, and Josephine knew she couldn't leave. Not without Samuel, not without answers. This was her home now, her child now. Whatever came next, she would face it. The riders disappeared before dawn, but their message was clear. Time was running out. The general store smelled of leather and desperation. Mrs. Henderson's fingers drummed against the counter. Her ledger lay open between them like an accusation. "Samuel's account is past due. Way past due." Josephine shifted Hope to her other arm. The baby had grown heavier, stronger. Her burns were fading to pink scars. But the shelves around them held necessities Josephine couldn't afford. "I need milk and cloth for diapers. Need don't pay bills." Mrs. Henderson turned the ledger around. Numbers marched across the page in neat columns. "You can read what he owes." The letters blurred together. Josephine's throat tightened. She'd hidden her shame for weeks. Now it sat exposed like a broken. "Oh, I'll pay when Samuel returns." Mrs. Henderson's smile was all teeth. "Course you will." The door chimed. A girl entered with autumn hair and curious eyes, maybe 16. She moved like her father, same purposeful stride, same way of taking up space. "Pa needs nails and rope." "Rosa Mackenzie." Mrs. Henderson's voice warmed. "How's your father?" "Same as always, stubborn as winter." Rosa's eyes found Josephine, found Hope. Her expression softened in a way that surprised them both. "Pretty baby?" Josephine nodded. Words felt dangerous here, too much truth in them. Rosa paid for her father's supplies, but her gaze kept drifting back. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. That evening, a soft knock came at the cabin door. Rosa stood on the porch with a basket covered in checked cloth. "Thought you might need these." Inside lay baby clothes, soft cotton diapers, a small wooden rattle, things a child might outgrow, things a father might save. "I can't pay you." "Didn't ask you to." Rosa stepped inside without invitation. The cabin felt smaller with two women in it. She touched Hope's cheek with gentle fingers. "She's got his eyes, Samuel's eyes." "You knew him well?" "Well enough." Rosa moved to the window. Outside, darkness settled over the mountains. Pa don't trust easy, but he trusted Samuel. She turned. Shy to her young face held old sorrows. "I could teach you if you want." "Teach me what?" "Reading, writing, things a woman needs." Heat rose in Josephine's cheeks. Her secret hung between them like smoke. "What makes you think I need teaching?" "Same thing that made me need it once." being too proud to ask. They met by lamplight. After that, Rosa brought her father's books, simple ones first. Children's stories. Slowly, letters became words. Words became meaning. Rosa never asked why Samuel had left, never questioned Josephine's right to be there, just taught with the patience of someone who understood shame. Your pa know you're here? Pa knows what he needs to know. But Tom Mackenzie watched from the ridge. His horse stood statue still against the sky, waiting, always waiting. The morning brought different visitors. A black carriage rolled down the main street. Too fine for Copper Creek, too clean. Clayton Murdoch stepped out like he owned the ground beneath his feet. His suit was pressed. His smile was oil on water. He knocked with authority, stood in the doorway taking inventory. His eyes counted everything, valued everything. Miss Josephine, heard Samuel's got himself a bride. Congratulations. Hope fussed, in her arms. Babies knew things adults pretended not to see. Samuel's not here. So I gathered. Been gone a spell, hasn't he? Murdoch's smile never wavered. Thing is, he owes me considerable money. Mining investments. Bad luck, really. He produced papers from his coat. Legal documents thick with seals and signatures. I'd hate to see a young woman and child suffer for his debts. I'll buy this property fair and square. Give you enough to get back where you came from. This is where I come from now. Is it? His eyes traveled over her dark skin, over Hope's mixed features. Funny how that works. Samuel never mentioned having family. The threat hung unspoken. Challenge my claim. See what happens. I'll need time to think. Course you will. But don't think too long. Debts have a way of growing. He left the papers on her table, rode away in his fine carriage, but the smell of him lingered. Sweet cologne covering something rotten. That night Rosa came with urgency instead of books. Her face was pale in the lamplight. Pa's been asking questions about Samuel, about you. What kind of questions? The kind that don't have good answers. Rosa moved to Samuel's desk, pulled open drawers with practiced hands. There's things here, letters he kept hidden. She found them tucked behind loose boards, letters in feminine handwriting, pressed. Flowers between the pages. A miniature portrait of a white woman with gentle eyes. Rosa read them aloud. Each word was a small betrayal. My dearest Samuel, the baby grows stronger each day. She has your stubborn chin. I pray this frontier fever passes and you return to us soon. The letters were signed Elizabeth. Elizabeth Whitmore. Samuel's wife. His real wife. The woman in the portrait was young. Beautiful. Dead, according to the last letter. Died giving birth to the baby she'd carried across the continent. The baby sleeping peacefully in Josephine's arms. He was already married. Josephine's voice was barely a whisper. Married to a white woman back east. Had been for 3 years. The marriage certificate on her table suddenly felt like nothing. Worthless paper. A lie wrapped in legal language. Then hope isn't mine to keep. Blood don't make family. Not always. But Rosa's words couldn't change the truth. Josephine had no legal claim to anything. Not the child. Not the cabin. Not even her place in this hostile town. The letters told the whole story. Samuel's desperation after Elizabeth's death. His need for someone to care for Hope. Someone who wouldn't ask too many questions. He'd found Josephine through a marriage broker. Promised her a life that was already claimed by ghosts. What will you do? Josephine looked down at Hope. The baby's fingers wrapped around her thumb with perfect trust. 6 months of midnight feedings. 6 months of lullabies and worry and love that felt more real than any piece of paper. I don't know. But even as she said it, something hardened inside her chest. Something that felt like steel wrapped in velvet. Hope was her daughter now. Had been from the moment she'd lifted her from that makeshift crib, legal or not, right or not. Let them come with their papers and their claims. Let them try to take what belonged to love instead of law. She'd fight them all. Tom Mackenzie appeared at dawn like a man carrying bad news. His horse's breath steamed in the cold air. He dismounted slowly, each movement deliberate. "We need to talk." Josephine stood in the doorway with Hope against her shoulder. The baby had learned to smile. The expression transformed her small face into something bright. "About what?" "About Samuel." Tom removed his hat. His gray hair was pressed flat. "About why he ain't coming home." They walked to the ridge behind the cabin. The ground was hard beneath their feet. Frost clung to the sagebrush like promises nobody meant to keep. Tom stopped beside an old mining shaft. The wooden frame had rotted years ago. Only darkness remained below. "Found him yesterday. Down there." The words hit Josephine like stones. She'd known. Somewhere deep inside, she'd known Samuel wasn't coming back. But knowing and hearing were different creatures. "How long?" "Months. Since before you arrived." Hope gurgled against Josephine's neck. Innocent sounds in a world gone suddenly cruel. The baby reached for Tom's weathered face. He let her tiny fingers explore his cheek. "Samuel was my best friend. Made me promise to watch over his family if anything happened." "Then why did you tell me to leave?" Tom's shoulders sagged. The weight of months pressed down between them. "Because I was scared. Scared of what caring for you might cost." He touched Hope's hand. "My Martha died birthing Rosa. 17 years I've been raising that girl alone. Didn't want to risk her getting caught up in Samuel's troubles." The truth hung between them like morning mist. Tom's gruffness hadn't been prejudice. It had been fear wrapped in protection. "What troubles?" "The kind that got Samuel killed." Tom led her back to the cabin. Inside, he examined Hope's faded scars with gentle hands. His jaw tightened. "These ain't accident burns. They're deliberate. Someone hurt this baby to make Samuel talk." Josephine's vision blurred. She'd bathed those scars, kissed them better, never imagined they were wounds from torture. Hope had been an infant, barely 3 months old. "Talk about what?" "Silver. Samuel found a vein on his property. Small but pure, worth enough to kill for." Tom moved to the window, scanned the horizon like a man expecting trouble. "Clayton, Murdoch's been buying up claims for years. Most folks sell willing, Samuel wouldn't. So Murdoch had him killed. Can't prove it, but Samuel was found with rope burns on his wrists, and that baby's scars matched the pattern of heated metal. Someone used her to break him." The room felt smaller suddenly, walls closing in like a trap. Josephine sank into Samuel's chair with Hope in her arms. "The silver. Is it real?" "Real as death, but worthless if you can't mine it. And Murdoch's made sure nobody else can work these hills." A new sound interrupted them. Carriage wheels on hard ground. Tom tensed. His hand moved instinctively to his gun. "Stay inside." But Josephine moved to the window. A different carriage this time, smaller, travel-worn. A woman stepped out with the bearing of someone accustomed to being obeyed. She was older than the portrait suggested. Gray touched her brown hair, but the eyes were the same. Elizabeth's eyes. "Margaret Whitmore." Tom's voice was flat. "Samuel's sister." Margaret knocked with authority. Josephine opened the door because hiding would solve nothing. "Miss Banks, I'm here for my niece." No pleasantries, no condolences. Just claim staked like a flag in enemy territory. Margaret's eyes found Hope immediately, cataloged every feature, saw Samuel in the baby's face just as everyone else did. "She's beautiful. Elizabeth would be proud. Elizabeth's dead. Yes, which makes me her closest living relative." Margaret produced papers from her traveling bag, legal documents thick with seals. "I have custody rights and considerable resources to provide for her." Tom stepped between them. Lady's got as much right to that baby as anyone. Does she? Margaret's smile was sharp as winter wind. I have birth certificates, marriage records, documentation of my brother's legitimate family. What does she have? The question hung unanswered, because they all knew. Josephine had nothing but love, and love didn't hold up in court. Margaret's expression softened slightly. I'm not without compassion. Samuel obviously cared for you, enough to bring you here. I'll pay for your passage back east, give you enough to start over. I don't want money. Then what do you want? Josephine looked down at Hope. The baby was reaching for Margaret now, curious about this new face, this new voice. I want what's best for her. Then you'll see reason. I can give her education, society, a future worthy of her father's memory. Margaret moved closer. Her dress rustled like autumn leaves. You love her. I can see that. But love isn't enough. Not in this world. Not for a child who'll face questions about her parentage her entire life. The truth cut deep because it was true. Hope would grow up between worlds, too dark for some places, too light for others, a child carrying her father's secrets in her mixed blood. There's more. Margaret's voice dropped. Clayton Murdoch has been asking questions in town about Samuel's debts, about this property. He knows you have no legal claim. Tom told you about Murdoch. Tom told me about the silver and about how Samuel died protecting it. Margaret's eyes hardened. Murdoch's men tortured an infant to break her father. What do you think they'll do to you? The cabin felt cold suddenly. Wind rattled the windows, the same wind that had brought riders in the night. Hope fussed against Josephine's chest. Sensing tension she couldn't understand, Josephine rocked her gently, hummed the lullaby that had become their song. I need time to think. Time is what we don't have. Murdoch's petition to seize this property goes before the judge next week. If you're here when that happens, you'll lose everything, including her. Margaret gathered her papers, prepared to leave. I'll be at the hotel tonight. Tomorrow I return to Boston, with or without both of you. She paused at the door. Samuel wrote about you. In his last letter to Elizabeth, said you had a good heart, strong hands, the kind of woman who could love a child that wasn't hers. The words hit harder than accusations. Samuel had seen her clearly, maybe the only person who ever had. He also said you deserve better than he could give you. Maybe he was right. Margaret left them in silence. Tom remained by the window, guardian against threats that multiplied like shadows. Hope fell asleep in Josephine's arms, her small body, warm and trusting. 6 months of midnight feedings had created bonds stronger than blood, deeper than law. But Margaret was right about one thing. Love wasn't enough. Not in a world that measured worth in dollars and skin color. The silver meant nothing if Hope wasn't safe. The property meant nothing if it became her grave. Outside, the wind carried new sounds. Riders approaching. Too many for a social call. Tom checked his rifle. They're coming. Josephine held Hope closer, made her choice in the space between heartbeats. She would give her daughter the one thing Samuel couldn't, a chance at life without looking over her shoulder, even if it killed her to do it. The courtroom filled like a church on Judgment Day. Copper Creek's entire population seemed to have squeezed into the narrow space. Their whispers rose and fell like wind through winter wheat. Judge Morrison entered with the weight of Solomon on his shoulders. His black robe swept the floor. His eyes held the weariness of a man who'd seen too many broken families. Josephine sat in the front row with Hope in her arms. The baby wore a white dress Margaret had brought from Boston. Clean, proper, the kind of clothes that spoke of money and respectability. Margaret sat across the aisle. Her traveling suit was pressed, her hands folded in her lap like prayer books. She'd hired a lawyer from Carson City, a man with silver hair and confident eyes. Tom Mackenzie filled the seat behind Josephine, Rosa beside him. Their presence was armor against the stares, against the weight of being alone in a room full of strangers. Clayton Murdoch sat in the back. His smile was oil on troubled water. He'd come to watch his problems solve themselves. Case of Whitmore versus Banks. Judge Morrison's voice cut through the whispers. Custody of the minor child known as Hope Whitmore. Margaret's lawyer stood first. He was everything a courtroom expected. Polished, articulate, armed with facts that cut like razor blades. Your Honor, my client is the child's legal guardian. She possesses birth certificates, marriage records, and documented proof of familial relationship. The defendant has no legal standing whatsoever. He presented papers with theatrical flourish. Each document was a nail in Josephine's coffin. Furthermore, my client can provide education, social standing, and financial security. She represents the child's best interests in every measurable way. Judge Morrison examined the documents. His face revealed nothing, but his eyes lingered. On Hope's mixed features, on the impossible situation Samuel had created. Miss Banks, do you have legal representation? Josephine stood slowly. Hope fussed against her shoulder, sensing tension she couldn't understand. No, Your Honor. Just myself. And what is your relationship to this child? The question hung in the air like smoke. Everyone knew the answer. Everyone understood its inadequacy. I'm her mother. Have been since the day I found her. Margaret's lawyer objected. Spoke of legal definitions and proper procedures. His words were arrows aimed at Josephine's heart. But Judge Morrison raised his hand. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Continue, Miss Banks. Samuel brought me here to care for her, to love her, to be the mother she'd lost. Josephine's voice stayed steady. Blood doesn't make family. Love does. But you have no legal claim to this child. No, Your Honor, I don't. The admission cost her everything, but lies wouldn't help Hope. Only truth could do that now. Margaret's lawyer smiled. Victory was within reach. Then Tom Mackenzie stood. His weathered hands gripped his hat. His voice carried the authority of a man who'd never lied to save himself. Your Honor, I got something to say about Samuel Whitmore's death. The courtroom stirred. Murdoch's smile faltered. Tom told the story methodically. Samuel's discovery of silver, the threats that followed, the torture of an innocent baby to break her father's spirit. He produced evidence. Rope fragments from the mine shaft, a heated branding iron found on Murdoch's property, the kind that would leave scars like Hope's. Margaret's face went white. She stared at the faded marks on Hope's arms. Marks she'd assumed were childhood accidents. Someone tortured this baby to make Samuel talk. She was 3 months old. The courtroom erupted. Voices rose in outrage. Judge Morrison pounded his gavel for order. Murdoch stood to leave. Tom's words had painted him as a monster, but Margaret's lawyer was faster. Your Honor, regardless of these allegations, the custody question remains. My client can remove this child from danger, provide her with safety and opportunity. Judge. Morrison studied the papers again. The law was clear. Blood relatives had priority, especially when they possessed unlimited resources. The child will be returned to her blood relatives in Boston. Case closed. His gavel fell like thunder. Josephine's world cracked down the middle. Margaret approached with cautious steps, her hands extended toward Hope. The baby looked between them with Samuel's eyes. She's mine. Josephine's voice was barely audible. I'm all she's ever known. The sheriff moved closer. His duty was clear even if his heart wasn't in it. Then Margaret surprised everyone. She lowered her hands, stepped back. Wait. The courtroom held its breath. Miss Banks, you love this child. More than my own life. Then come with us. To Boston. As her nanny. Her caretaker. The woman who knows her best. The offer hung between them like a bridge over deep water. Josephine could keep Hope, but only as a servant. Only by giving up her claim to motherhood. You'd do that? For her sake. Yes. Judge Morrison nodded. The solution satisfied legal requirements while acknowledging deeper truths. Agreed. Case dismissed. The train station bustled with departure energy. Steam rose from the locomotive like prayers ascending. Margaret had purchased first-class tickets, the kind that promised comfort and respectability. Josephine held hope one last time as her daughter's mother. After this moment, she would be Miss Banks, the nanny, the hired help who happened to love beyond measure. Hope had grown heavier in her arms, stronger. Her burns had faded to silver lines that caught the light, scars that told stories of survival. Time to go. Margaret's voice was gentle. Understanding the magnitude of what Josephine was sacrificing, Josephine lifted Hope toward Margaret's waiting arms. The baby reached back. Her small fingers grasped at air. "Mama." The word came clear as mountain water. Hope's first word, the one she'd been saving for this moment. But she was reaching for Josephine, not Margaret, not the woman who would legally become her guardian. Margaret took the baby with careful hands, turned her toward the train car, toward the future that awaited them. "She'll forget soon enough." The words were meant as comfort, but they landed like stones in deep water. Josephine watched her heart disappear into the distance. The train whistle screamed, steam hissed. Metal wheels began their eternal song of departure. Josephine stood alone on the platform as the locomotive pulled away, taking Hope toward a life of privilege and education. Away from the woman who'd loved her first, she walked back through Copper Creek one last time, past the general store where Mrs. Henderson watched from her window, past the hotel where she'd once hoped to find Samuel. The cabin sat empty at the edge of town. Dust had already begun to gather on the windowsills. Soon it would be just another broken dream in a landscape, full of them. Josephine touched the doorframe where she'd first held Hope. Where love had bloomed in the space between heartbeats, sometimes the most loving thing a mother can do is let someone else be the mother. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel, and if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.